Hi, everybody. My name's Kelby, and my partner Halima and I. This is our interview report presentation for HEA 600 Foundations of Leadership in Higher Education.
Hello, everyone. So, for our first slide, we wanted to do a summary of each person we interviewed. So, I interviewed Dr. Lee, who is the current Chief Diversity Officer at Edwards College. And once she assumed her position, her first task was to develop an EDI 5-year plan that included making EDI curriculums, trainings, and programs, as well as having a balanced representation in faculty, student, and staff. And for Dr. Lee, the hardest thing she had to deal with once she was the CDO of Edwards College was really working with the current campus climate that broke out into protest due to claims of racial biases and a few other stuff. So her challenge was really coming into an institute for the first time and having to develop these plans and make sure that the institute can go back to the way it was, which aligns with the institute goals. Some key elements and findings include to have passion for the work that you do. Dr. Lee encourages that I find something that I'm passionate about so that I don't have that burnout as soon as I'm in the job. When you find something that you're passionate about, you're able to appreciate it and enjoy the work that you do, and you don't really think about it as a job, but as something that you enjoy doing. The second point was when working in higher education, it's important to build relationships with both students and administration. I think this is very important, especially when it comes to transformational leaders and transactional leaders. Transformational leaders create spaces for leaders to engage and make connections with everyone involved. So, for this example, it would be college students and the administrations. Dr. Lee also believes in shared decision making with the students, even if that means college admin has the final say. Having those shared decision with students, even if that means having a panel discussion, having students voice their opinion through an email or any sort of communication. I think that shared decision works best because the college has the students in mind, and when both the college admin and students have the desired outcome that are the same, they're more willing to work with one another. So shared decision making is very important, especially since the decision the college makes will most likely affect the students. Just having them at the table, even if it's a short dialogue discussion, it would make so much more difference for the students. One of the biggest takeaway from my interview with Dr. Lee is to be passionate about the work that I do. I'm currently in higher education and had several other roles within higher education, and I don't think my current role is fit for me. So again, just being passionate and self-assessing and making sure that you're in the right field. Again, that comes with being self-aware and having some transparency with yourself and the people you work with. So that's something that I'm hoping to dabble into some more through internships, like Dr. Lee recommended for me to go to different internship opportunities and just look at different higher education positions so that I can find what I truly love to do through that route of internships. And lastly was the importance of continuous learning. Dr. Lee recently got her doctorates in higher education, even though she has over 10 plus years of experience in working with higher education and EDI and developing EDI curriculum and courses and programs for almost 4 colleges. She is continuing to learn And so that's something that I take away with me to continue to learn even beyond your doctorate's degree, whether that's learning what the students are doing now, whether that's just getting well versed with the campus climate and the campus community. Learning never really stops. So, by prioritizing ongoing or continuous learning, we are able to better serve our students. For my professional development plan, I will use the advice I got from Dr. Lee to actively seek out opportunities and roles within higher education through internship or mentorship so that I'm able to get my feet wet and get some opportunities and see what's out there that I may like or may not like. This is helpful while I'm still in school and I don't have a specific career path just yet. So it will help me kind of figure out what it is that I want to do in higher education, as well as Dr. Lee recommended I do internships in different departments. So I'll look into that as well. And the last thing, and I mentioned previously, is like continuing learning. Continuous learning will help us serve our students so much better because we're up to date with the standards of today and what, as the world is changing, we need to be knowledgeable about what's happening around us so that we're better serve our students. So that is what I plan to do with the advice Dr. Lee gave me for the interview.
So for my interview, I also wanted to provide you a summary. Um, so Mary is the Associate Vice President of Student Affairs at a two-year community college. And the challenge that Mary had to deal with is quite complex. So her boss at the time, which would have been the Associate Vice President of Student Affairs, was being let go from that position. And Mary was asked if she would like to assume that position once her boss was let go. So she had to deal with finding out about 5 days ahead that her boss was going to be let go, had to decide in a short amount of time to take that position or not, and how to deal with all of the colleagues and peers moving forward. So people that were her coworkers that are now turning into people that work under her. So as I interviewed Mary, I got to know exactly how she dealt with that situation, the kind of effects that it took on her, and now about 15 years removed from that situation, what she had learned and what advice she would give to someone moving forward. So let's look into that. So some of the key elements and findings from my interview with Mary was that um, she definitely displayed authentic leadership. She knew herself well enough to know if she could actually take on the role to be AVP of Student Affairs. And she made the decision in a very quick amount of time, which was very difficult, but she still holds that position 15 years later, which I think definitely speaks to knowing what she was doing. Also, adaptive leadership, which focuses primarily on how leaders help others do the work that they need to do and adapt to the challenges that they face. I mean, finding out that your boss is going to be let go 5 days before they actually are, and then having to deal with everyone that is left behind essentially and work through those relationships definitely calls for adaptive leadership skills. And Mary displayed those quite well. And then the transformation in leadership skills by being in good communication with the staff and colleagues and empowering their work. So really, Mary went from being colleagues with all these people to now being their boss. So that caused her to have to reevaluate those relationships in the work setting and knowing how best to help each individual employee moving forward. My key takeaways from my interview with Mary is to communicate and ask for help when needed. Before Mary assumed the new role, she communicated with the president and the provost of the institution on how best to move forward and to make sure it was the right fit for her. She knew her boundaries and limitations. Though she did assume the role, she took a true look at herself and she knew exactly what she was capable of moving forward. And then the other key takeaway was to be mindful that higher education is constantly changing, both from a professional staff and student perspective, and to educate yourself at the job and outside the job as needed. For my professional development plan, I plan to use the advice that Mary gave me, which was to anticipate those changes that are happening outside in the world and how that will affect higher education moving forward. We have definitely seen that, for example, with the diversity, equity, inclusion, and social justice requirements and curriculum. And then the other is to connect with all colleagues and communicate frequently. We are only as good as we are as a team, and we want to best support our students because honestly, the only reason that we all work in higher education is because of the students that walk in and out of that building or show up online every single day. So for our compare and contrast, we'll look at the similarities side first. Both interviewees assumed a position where the previous person had been let go. We both found that very interesting because you never know exactly what you're walking into when you step into a new position. So to enter with the correct mindset is very important, and also to establish communication with your colleagues and anyone that you're involved with at the institution is really important, which leads to the second point that both of our interviewees stressed was that communication with colleagues, your bosses, anyone at the institution is extremely important when moving roles. Some of the differences that we saw was that Dr. Lee entered their role during a crucial time for student activism. So she came when students were asking for something, a large need. There was a lot of things happening on campus that needed to be addressed, and Dr. Lee worked on doing that, where Mary had already been at the institution for a considerable amount of years prior to assuming this new role. So she was already aware of the things that were going on with students and possibly most of the situations that she was going to deal with while moving into the new role.
These are my references. I used the textbook as well as the Authentic Leadership for the Future TED Talk.
Here are my references from my interview. I used our textbook along with a YouTube video that was provided to us specifically about transformational leadership.